as we talked about yesterday, we talked a little bit about how to create sketches. Well, we're going to take that one step further so that we're able to start drawing objects. And here's just a basic object that we're going to start out with. How can I draw a block? Okay, so a block that looks like this, or a cube, or a box, or whatever you want to call this object. So yesterday we went through a process, and we went to this screen first when we first opened up Inventor. So this is the screen that we're at. Remember, Inventor has 4 sections. Anybody remember what they are? Part, drawings, assembly, and presentations. Okay? And we're only going to do a part files for this project. Okay, so there's several ways to start part files. One, here, you have a new part. You can simply just click on that and double click it, and when I double click on it, what opens up? Not necessarily a plane, but that open space that we can put planes into. The plane is the next step after that. So that open space to draw things in. That's what comes up in the part file. If you don't want to click here, you can always go new up at that corner right there and get to the new part files through that. You can open up existing things that you've drawn before down here in the recent documents, or you also have the open button there that will work. So all those things will help you to be able to open up or start out with the Inventor file. So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to start with a new part file. So I simply double click that, and then now I come to that open workspace. After I get this open workspace, what do I do next? A what? I click a sketch. And what is that sketch doing? Okay, it's giving you a sheet of paper that you got to tell where it's going to go, whether it's going to go on the floor, the wall in front, or the wall on the right side, so that you can draw on. So when you hit create a sketch, it's giving you a sheet of paper to draw on, and you have to be able to tell where you want to draw. So when I hit create a sketch, that pops up. And remember, it labels those. That's your XY plane. This is your YZ. There's your XZ. Now, over here, off to the right, you see a view cube. The view cube says 3 different things. This says front, this says right, and this says top. These are 3 views that we commonly use. And right now, you're in a view called the home view. So if you were to hit this house, it would take you this view automatically. In that home view, you see all 3 views at one time. You see the top, you see the right, and you see the front, as it says here. That's why the front plane is called the XY plane. Because if I am the view cube and I look in the front, I see that wall, which is the XY plane. If I am the view cube and I look to my right, I see which plane? YZ. And if I am the cube and I look up, I see the XZ. Okay? And again, that's why they also help label it. This is your front, this is your right side, this is your top or bottom, however you want to look at it. So after I hit create a sketch, I have to click one of these 3 options. And again, it does matter, and we're going to use the XY plane for the next few days. So I'm going to go ahead and click XY plane. And it gives me that view right there. So notice it turns it around, it says you're looking at the front view, and it gives you that grid. If I want to change the grids, I can simply go here, there that shows the right side. Notice it doesn't show any grid lines because there's nothing to draw on. If you can't look at a sheet of paper from the side and be able to see anything, can you? You only can look at a sheet of paper straight on and be able to draw on it. So that's why it went to the front. But you can rotate around to see any of the views that you want using that view cube, and again, you can always hit that home view and go back to it. And it takes you back to seeing all 3, or that isometric view as we're going to call it. So now, I have that sketch paper, I have that sheet of paper that I want to draw on. And I want to be able to draw on it. This is where we were at yesterday, where I just told you, let's go ahead and draw a rectangle. Now, this is where Inventor is different than any other program that you used before. Inventor, when it draws something, not only does it draw the shape, but it gives everything a dimension or a length. Up here in the center is a dimension tool. If I was to click dimension tool and click on the line and then go up and double click again, it says that this line is 8.934063 inches long. How many of you would pull that number out of a hat and draw it? No, you wouldn't, would you? That's why every single thing that we draw, we always have to give it a dimension. Because if not, Inventor assigns it something that more than likely you don't want it to happen, to be. So when we draw something, you dimension it. When you draw something else, you dimension it. You draw, you dimension. You draw, and you dimension. This is probably the most important thing that you guys will forget at the very beginning. You forget to dimension. And what will happen is you guys will draw this beautiful putt-putt course that will have all the shapes in it. It will have a beautiful theme. And at the very end, I'll tell you guys, hey, you need to put some dimensions on it to find the area of your shapes. And you'll pull up a dimension, and your shapes are like 0.25 inches long. Your entire course is 1.5 inches. Can you play putt-putt on 1.5 inches? No, the ball barely fits on 1.5 inches. So everything that we draw has to be life size. So whenever we draw something in Inventor, it's always going to be life size. That's why we always dimension it. So we'll be using dimensions like 10 feet, 12 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet, whatever you guys seem to make, or whatever you guys think is reasonable for the length of courses. And that's something that you guys will end up having to research when you guys start doing some stuff later on next week. How big are things going to be? But for now, everything we draw always has to have a dimension. And I'm going to go ahead and dimension this box right here. I'm going to make it 4 inches. So I just simply type in 4, and then I hit the check mark. Notice it makes it that 4 inches. Now, it was out right here, which is kind of far. If you take the wheel on your mouse, or that scroll wheel, and you roll it in and out, that zooms the screen in and out. If you hold that scroll wheel down, and you move left and right or up and down, that pans that screen. So you can always constantly zoom in and out to change the size of your screen so you can see what you want. Other thing, as you start dimensioning, I would always start dimensioning probably your biggest thing first and work down to your smalls, because that allows you to adjust the screen so you can see more things at one time. If 4 is my biggest line, I usually put that in first so I can get that screen big enough so I can see everything. After I dimension one side, I then have to dimension another. I'm going to go ahead and make that 2. But notice I actually physically go in, I enter the number in, and then you hit that green check mark to say that you accept it. And it changes it to that size. So then now these lines can only be 4 inches and 2 inches. They can't be anything else unless I re-enter the number to make it different. This is really where you guys got to yesterday, where we sketched and we kind of played around with it. Now, we're going to try to make this 3-dimensional. Okay? The way you make something 3-dimensional, if I want to make this box, you draw that front, and then we're going to do what we call extrude it, or take that rectangle and bring it straight forward or straight back. So we have our rectangle drawn up on our screen. Now we're going to bring that straight forward or straight back so it makes it a 3-dimensional object or turn it into a box. If I'm done sketching, then I can finish my sketch. And when I hit finish my sketch, notice it turned it back to that 3-dimensional view, that home view, that isometric view. The front view, you can see, the top view, and the right side view. I can't see everything, so I'll use my scroll wheel and zoom it in and out so I can see what I need to, but it turned that sheet of paper so I can see it 3-dimensional. Now I have to, what we're going to call, extrude it. Notice when I finished that sketch, it gave me a whole new set of commands. It's at where we started at from the very beginning. That create a sketch button's right there. There's the extrude. These 2 buttons are the only thing in this menu that we're going to use for this entire project. Okay? Create a sketch and extrude. When I hit extrude, a whole new set of commands are going to pop up. It's going to ask you for the profile, which is right there. If it's a simple object, Inventor's smart enough to know, hey, this is the only thing you extrude, so I'm going to select that for you. If you start getting complicated objects, then you might have to select it yourself. And we'll go into that a little later this week, things that we gotta select. Okay, and it's gonna bring it out. But notice down here, what's it asking for? A dimension. Because everything we do, we have to what? Dimension. So I'm going to dimension that. I'm going to go ahead and make that 2 inches. It always defaults to 1 inch. So if you forget to enter a dimension in, it's going to make it 1 when you extrude. But you always want to remember, I need to change that, so I got a dimension. When you're done, simply hit the green check mark, and there's your 3-dimensional object. Okay, there's your first box. This is basically, you just drew something that looks like this. A rectangle that's like 4 wide, 2 tall, and maybe 2 deep. Okay, that's what this is. Again, I can rotate it around to see the different sides. That will allow me to see the top, the right, and the back side. If I just want to see the back side only, I can click that. I can click underneath and see the bottom. Or again, if I get lost, I can always hit the home view and it takes me back to where I was at. Those are 3 main views. Okay? So now what we're going to do is you guys are going to draw these 3 objects yourself. Okay? And we're going to start out by doing this. Now, notice these are basically in that home view. This is called isometric graph paper, and we'll get into a lot more about how to use this later on. Right now I'm going to kind of show you about how to look at it and read it. This allows you to draw things 3-dimensionally. Just like I see, imagine there's a view cube up here. This is your front side. What's this one going to be? Top. This one would be your right. Okay. So if you're starting on the front plane and you want to draw this cube, then you're going to draw this rectangle and extrude it straight back. And that's all you're going to draw, because extrude takes that object and brings it straight forward or straight back, no matter what it is. If it's an L, I start on the front plane and I draw an L, and then I can extrude it straight back. If it's a T, I can draw a T and I can extrude it straight back. So you create a sketch 2-dimensionally, in this case a T, then you make it 3-dimensional by extruding it. And what you extrude can be any closed shape. It can be a Batman symbol. It can be letters. It can be stars. It can be whatever you want. It will extrude it, as long as it's closed. Remember, we talked about how figures had to be closed. So you can't just draw a K and expect it to extrude it. It has to be a blocked letter, like that. So it has to be closed. If I pour water right here, it can get to everything and not escape out. That's how I always describe it. If I want to draw my L, do I want to use my rectangle tool? No, what would I want to use probably instead? Lines. I would simply draw a line here and just keep drawing my lines in order to make an L. If you use your rectangle tool, it's going to put a line right there. And if I pour water here and there's a line there, can I get water to here? No. No. So Inventor doesn't like that. It wants to have only one closed object. So that's why you would use your line tool and draw the L. Same thing up here at the T. You don't want that line there because it won't get water everywhere when you pour it in there. Now, with these drawings, again, you have to have dimensions. To get the dimensions, that's where we're going to use this grid paper. And if I zoom in a little bit, you will see, and you'll see this a lot better on your iPad, you will see that there's grid lines. Each one of these grid lines is 1/4 of an inch. So if this is 2 grid lines, then how long is that line going to be? 0.5 or 2/4, or 1/2 inch, or 0.5. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4 lines up, then it's going to be 1 inch. So that's how you know what the dimensions are. If I extrude this back, it's going to be 1, 2, 3 squares back, or 0.75 or 3/4. Now, let's say you're awful at math. And this is something I'm going to teach you a little bit more later, but I'll go ahead and kind of give you a foresight into this. if I hit create sketch again, I can simply click on a surface and I'm going to draw a rectangle again. Let's say you don't know that 3/4 is 0.75. If I hit my dimension tool, I can simply hit 3 divided by 4 and hit enter, and it will tell me that it's 0.75. So Inventor is a calculator. Anything you can enter into a calculator, you can enter into this program, and it will add it, subtract it, multiply it, divide it, square it, take square roots, whatever you want. Anything a graphing and scientific calculator would do mathematically, so will this. Okay? For dimensions. But remember, I have to dimension both lines, so I'm going to go ahead and make that 0.5, because that's 2/4. If I finish my sketch, I can extrude it. I just added something onto that shit. So this process of creating a sketch, extruding it, creating a sketch, extruding it, creating a sketch, and extrude it is everything that you're going to need in order to create your putt-putt course. You create your floor, extrude it. Create this shape, extrude it. Create this shape, extrude it. Create this shape and extrude it. This one, this one, this one, and then until you get your entire course done. So the whole process is create a sketch. Select where you want your sketch to be, draw it, dimension it, finish it, extrude it. You're not going to learn anything else except for things that help you with that process for this entire project. Okay? We'll get into more about how can we do different things when we extrude the second time, or different ways to make the sketches easier or harder for what we're going to do. But that's the entire process that we're going to use. Create a sketch, draw it, dimension it, extrude it. The entire project. And what we're going to do is we're going to start out simple like this, where you guys are only drawing one sketch, this rectangle, and extruding it. Drawing one sketch, the L, and extruding it. Drawing one sketch, a T, and extruding it. When you get those 3 things done, then I want to check them off. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to pass these out.